Hello, Anthony.
Hello, Claudine.
We are welcomed today by having a wonderful guest, Donna Lane Nelson. We met Donna Lane at the unintended consequences of FATCA hearing. She actually had to renounce her U.S. citizenship, which we'll get into in just a moment. But just quickly, Anthony, give me a quick snippet on what FATCA is and how it harms U.S. persons.
Okay, FATCA stands for the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act. It was passed in 2010 sort of as an add-on to the Hire Act under the guise that it would help the U.S. government raise about $1 billion in revenue extra every year. It requires foreign banks to report information to the IRS of people it suspects of being U.S. persons. If the banks don't, there are significant penalties. The penalties would effectively ruin any foreign bank. So the bank's response to this is to say, well, we'll just get rid of U.S. persons, then we don't have any risk. And this has caused a disaster for many U.S. expats overseas. And then a lot of U.S. Visa holders in the U.S. who've become U.S. persons who now have their accounts in their homeland shut down.
Wow.
So it's been a complete disaster. And Donna Lane gave the introductory testimony at the hearing, which I thought was incredibly powerful. She brought the room. The room was quite quiet and stunned. And Donna Lane, thank you for joining us.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for asking.
Now, Donna Lane, you are a plaintiff in the FATCA lawsuit with Mark Crawford and Rand Paul. And so I contacted you I wanted to have it on because we did not do well in the Sixth Circuit. The case was dismissed.
That's it.
Now,
Go ahead.
the court gave the reason why, because the reason why is they claimed, well, these parties don't have standing because we don't see the credible threat. So I guess, how do you feel about that, Donna Lane? Can you tell me how you feel about the Sixth Circuit there?
Frustrated, angry, at the lack of understanding. I would love to see any one of the judges who made that ruling try to live without a bank account or being fired, which they wouldn't be, from their positions just because, say, they were citizens of Ohio, which is what is happening to Americans abroad. They don't understand what harm is to the people overseas.
So, Donna, tell us a little bit how this law is affecting expats in general, and then specifically how it affected you.
Okay, for expats in general, opening a bank account can be next to impossible. It took my husband 2 years to do it. When we first asked about it, the bank that I use regularly, the woman who I am, would just as soon have a cup of tea with as be my bank person, put her arms like this and said, lots of paperwork. 2 years later, he could open a bank account, but he can't get a loan. It's a deposit and withdrawal only, nothing else. It is affecting other people because they can be fired from their jobs because they're American, because they're not allowed to be on, say, the company bank account. Or, as in case of one of my friends, he was offered a great job, but the pension company, which they had to sign people up for that particular pension company for a whole bunch of rules, said, no, I'm sorry, you're American. So the company had to withdraw the offer. It's things like people trying to get a mortgage. The immediate thing is, you're American? No. If you have a mortgage, they may even call you and say, pay it up in 30 days. In Switzerland, for example, mortgages are renewed every 10 years. So even if they don't call you mortgage in this country, it would be impossible to renew it. In fact, one of our plaintiffs, Danny Kutel, had that problem. He ended up having to renounce so he could get a mortgage. And by the way, his 12-year-old daughter, who is American and Swiss, can't get even a kiddie account in Switzerland.
Wow.
Now, I use Switzerland as an example, but this is happening all over the world because of the IGAs signed by banks. Terrified America.
Listening to you complain about this, you're acting as if you're a middle-class person. I mean, you're a fat cat. Why do you need a mortgage? I mean, I'm sure you're you're someone who's obviously left the U.S. to avoid paying taxes, period, and you have a tremendous amount of wealth, and you're just a little upset that FATCA is sort of evening it out a little bit. Isn't that right?
I think I missed out on the rich part, Anthony.
Yeah.
People would assume because I live in Switzerland and France, I am wealthy. It does sound wealthy. However, we rent a studio in Switzerland. In the south of France, 30 years ago, I bought a small apartment. Are you ready for this? For $18,000.
Wow.
Cash.
Cash.
Donna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
FATCA.
Yeah, I know. I have always paid my taxes. When I owed taxes, my accountant cost much more than the taxes.
Yeah.
I don't $700 in taxes, but I had to pay $1,500 to the accountant, who was a lovely fellow. But I would have preferred the money myself.
Right, it's $1,500. That sounds like a reasonable amount of pay. Because we do it, and it's really especially when you have Swiss pensions involved. If you have a Tier 3 Swiss pension, it can get really crazy, and there's no tax due a lot of the times. Yet, in order to be in compliance, it gets way out of control. In fact, it's really not helping out a lot of people. My question for you.
Well, let me say something else. By using an accountant, there is a chance that there will not be a new form required.
Yeah.
By the government that we might not know about it. My husband and I have a small company. Notice the word small. And he had to fill out a form that took him 180 hours to know nothing. If he had not, the fine would have been $10,000. And I think there is a man in Canada that I just heard about because he didn't know about it, didn't file for 10 years, and he has been charged $120,000, but he owed nothing.
Yeah, he owed nothing, and he also came clean. He came forward with the IRS too. That's sort of the obnoxious part about that case. It's somebody who came forward with the IRS, and so we see a lot of things going on. The IRS is using FATCA as sort of the hammer, and then the anvil is people trying just to do the right thing. People are like, oh, I guess I'll come forward because you're making a critical assumption that's so faulty that the IRS will act reasonable, and they don't act reasonable. They look at you as a target. They can't get criminals, but they can get you, and they'll hammer you, and they're trained to dehumanize you and look at you as a number. They'll straight look at you and say, yeah, you're a smart guy, smart woman, you should have known to do this, we're just going to assess you with everything. And they actually, and I'm pretty sure, I think about this, that these revenue agents actually don't think people mind. I think they actually don't think people mind having to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of penalties, ruining their retirement. That's really how disconnected the entire process is. And FATCA did not create any new laws. All it did was make it more difficult not to. Well, FATCA doesn't make it you have to report anything. You could still just sort of go on the wayside, not do anything. There's no audits that happen because somebody was reported to FATCA. It doesn't happen. There's no audits that happen because somebody didn't report to FBAR. It's just more. It's just more. It's just more that the FBAR makes people realize, oh, I should come clean. And then you, as the IRS acts so unreasonably it's like if you were trying to encourage people to be in compliance, you would just do it exactly the opposite the way the IRS is doing it. That there are people who are coming forward and they're getting the full brunt as if the IRS discovered them on their own. And that is the thing. FATCA did not create any of these worldwide reporting requirements. Those already existed. It just made a lot of people aware of it. And some people already were aware of it. Now they are just having a difficulty living overseas. And I think this is one of there's such a huge disconnect between that Washington, D.C. bubble and the rest of the world. And there's this, I don't know how to put my finger on it exactly, but it's as if you don't have a right to live anywhere but in the United States. Do you get that feeling?
Very much so. It's almost like you're being punished for living overseas. There are various categories of us expats. There are some people who've gone over for a job and will only be gone 4 years. There are some who've gone over and decided, hey, this is pretty nice, I'm going to stay, or fallen in love. Like one of my good friends came over, I think 40-something years ago, married a German, and stayed, of course.
And that's,
we want to
know your story. What's your story? Why are you? So you're not there for tax evasion, I guess. So what is the real reason?
Okay, part of it was I loved Europe. As a new bride with my first husband, we were stationed in Stuttgart, and I just loved the life. But I also developed a good life and a career back in the States. But, you know, I would come over and visit. I love history. I loved exploring everything in Europe. And there was a period within a year where I was robbed twice. One at gunpoint, one at knife point, and part of it's living in any big city. But I also had 2 friends murdered. And I thought, I really don't want to live under this pressure. Now, I know there's crime in Europe, too. And I started applying for jobs. I sent something like 800 CVs in a few weeks. Wow. And ended up with a job in Switzerland. And came over and realized it's really a good style of life. I mean, I don't worry about things like life insurance, decent vacations. When I worked, I'm now retired. It was just a nice quality of work-life balance.
So, do you think it's a fundamental right of Americans to be able to go anywhere in the world that an opportunity presents itself?
Of course, we need to have opportunities, and now we're under the situation where opportunities are denied.
Yeah, and I mean it's worldwide. I think that's the part. It's these opportunities denied that is the sickening part of it. That you know that FATCA has gone and made U.S. citizens second class. You know,
No,
if you're in the
they-
U.S.,
that's-
you're fine. If you're in the U.S., you're fine.
The word is toxic.
Yeah.
At my bank, and by the way, I don't have a foreign bank. I have a local bank.
Yeah.
The IRS keeps referring to people as foreign banks. I'm sorry, it isn't.
Right.
You know, I have coffee with one of the tellers, but they said that it was once when they loved to see Americans walk through the door. Now they dread it. And that wasn't, I mean, on the teller level, it is because they have to explain FATCA to people to say, no, you can't come into our bank.
Wow.
I mean, just imagine if you walked into a bank where, you know, down the street from where you live, and they said, gee, Anthony, you can't have an account because you live in wherever you live.
That's amazing. Anthony, give me just a quick sum up of this lack of standing that FATCA was dismissed on.
Okay, yeah. So Jim Bopp, who is the lead attorney on this case, he wrote a nice summary of where the Sixth Circuit sort of fell off the rails. What they said was that there's typical standards of standing. You have to be injured to bring a case. It's just a general rule, because otherwise you'd have courts overwhelmed with things where no one's really damaged. So, like, look, you need to have an actual injury in order for you to have a lawsuit.
Physical or emotional?
Either one. An injury.
Okay.
That's all it's required. You just need something that can be demonstrated. So there's been, you know, years the Supreme Court has, this is a big issue. It comes down to constitutional law. The Supreme Court has come up with rules about what is required for standing, and it's like you need to have some sort of threat. You know, you don't actually have to be injured, but if you're pretty sure you're going to be injured, hey, you know what? That's pretty good. That's gonna do it. Well, the Sixth Circuit goes a little bit further. Like, well, that might be fine and dandy, but what we really need is a credible threat, which. You know, at first I was like, okay, well, they increased the standard sort of willy-nilly there, which is obnoxious. But then as I thought of it overnight, I said, wait a second. Donna Lane, it's not a credible threat. You have been injured. There's not a threat of injury, Donna Lane. It's an actual injury. Would you not agree?
I would agree, because basically I had a choice between my nationality and a bank account, or changing my life totally and going back to the United States. And I mean, it still happens, Anthony. I renounced in 2011. Last February, my life insurance contacted me and said, we know you were born in America, but we need to prove you're not American to continue your policy.
Wow.
I'm sorry, at my age, what life insurance would give me a policy?
Right, if you weren't able to get, right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, basically, you would lose everything if you could not, if you did not have, and you have Swiss citizenship now, right?
Yes.
Yeah. If you weren't able to get Swiss citizenship, if you would have to go to the U.S., you have nothing. You have a daughter living in the U.S., or is she living? Where is she living?
No, she's currently living in the Boston area.
All right, so you might be living in her basement if it was for that. It's very lovely
Yeah.
in Boston.
Lovely city.
Lovely city. And how is this? Who could say this with a straight face to say Donna Lane is not injured by FATCA?
I think it's just so telling. The statement that I had to choose between my U.S. citizenship and a bank account. How is that not injury?
Yeah, how is
That's
that not
insane?
And
Don't forget that Donna Lane became physically ill after renouncing her
Right,
citizenship
and
because she was so upset.
you did have a reversal, as it's called, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So now what? Now that FATCA has been denied in the Sixth Circuit, Anthony, what happens next?
Well, Donna Lane was telling me that Jim Bopp might be filing a motion to have the case heard en banc by the entirety of the Sixth Circuit, or it may be something where they would go to the Supreme Court, and that's Elena Kagan, sort of as the gatekeeper. Her clerks are the gatekeeper on a petition there. So I'm not sure which way it's going, but I think no matter what, and this is, I think a very critical point, every court decision is political. It is. The court is a political body, and they're probably the most political because they claim they're not, right? And isn't that a nice thing? So they are a political body, and what needs to be done is the facts need to get out there, because the truth is FATCA is a horrible law that doesn't help anybody. It's a complete disaster. When we were at the hearing, our side, the repeal side, was high energy, and the other side, they knew they were on that they had the turkey, and they're sort of like, yeah, but we gotta.
I don't think Elise Bean knew. I think Elise Bean.
You think she was a true believer?
Truly believes. Yeah,
Really?
I do. I do.
All right. But I think there's a few people on the other side. It's like they might have been persuaded to do that. They kind of knew it's a little nasty. The critical thing is, let's make sure we keep the facts of FATCA up there. Look here, tell the stories of Donna Lane, the story of Danny, Mark Crawford, international businessman, can't do business internationally. He can't take deals he used to take because he's a U.S. person. Yet the Sixth Circuit says, no.
Not a big
That's not a threat. No, the threat already happened. It's a completed action. It's not a threat anymore. It's an actual injury that you could put your finger on. What is wrong with you here to say this? So you guys, the Sixth Circuit, if you don't want to continue to embarrass yourself, take a look at what's going on. And we have our duty to make sure that everybody's known. So get into people's faces a little bit. We have all the, we'll give a link to all the Twitter, all the social media for everybody involved, the supporters and the detractors. Get in there and tell them this is a piece of crap law that needs to go. And this is the push, because the chairman of the Oversight Committee and the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, this is going to be the push. Mark Meadows, September 2017 is the push for tax reform. Our understanding is that the repeal movement will be part of tax reform, which may switch to a residency-based taxation system, not the citizenship-based. And the citizenship-based is a relic from the Civil War, which most people don't understand. It's just, no one else in the world does it. So that would sort of negate the need for FATCA.
May I bring into something there? Someone, say, is a Canadian citizen, the closest hospital is Vancouver. They go to Vancouver, they have their baby, they go back. The kid never enters the U.S. again, and yet every single cent that kid earns will be subject to U.S. taxes. And to make it worse, that kid now will not be able to get a bank account or a mortgage.
Yep.
Or to take it to the extreme, save for their retirement. It makes the kid toxic.
Wow.
So, I mean,
and I think the thing is
advantage to be an American overseas.
If we think about some of the big stories that the media covers, and, is it really news? This is the largest scandal I can think of. It is an international relations disaster that has ruined Americans and it ruins America. It's such a scandal. We need to get people to know. If Americans actually knew about this and saw how it worked, saw what a ridiculous piece of crap that it is, it'd be gone. That's our job, is to get people to know this thing doesn't help. It doesn't raise revenue. It
No.
doesn't do anything.
And I would like someone on the Sixth Circuit or anywhere to show me the drug dealer or terrorist that FATCA has brought in. Because so far we have no evidence that FATCA has brought down any criminal activity. And show me a drug dealer who looks at the books and goes, oh, FATCA. Guys, you know what? We're going to have to find a new legitimate line of work because FATCA is going to stop us from drug dealing.
Yeah, well,
It's bullshit.
Yeah, indeed there is. And when we're at the hearing, and it's just, I think this is where we were admonished by the minority leader, because I think everybody in the room with the brain was shaking our heads. I think I saw your head shaking a little bit at this, Donna, when they were going on and claiming that, oh, well, FATCA is helping with tax evasion and sex trafficking. Which I'm like, sex trafficking? That's just prostitution. Prostitution? What? Where are you going with this? So, I mean, it conflated to, man, this FATCA thing will just help with everything. And that's where all of us were just like, what are you talking about here? This is just insulting. And that's when we were yelled at for shaking our heads to say, you're being a complete fool.
Yeah.
They made us feel as if we were criminals. And I know a lot of expats in several different countries. None of us have made a career choice to be a sex trafficker, a drug dealer, a tax evader. Most of us are just normal people.
And you have always paid, and this is true, this is something that Keith Redmond, our great advocate there, has reminded. All these people pay taxes. They just pay the taxes in the country they're in. So the claim that they're tax evaders is completely inaccurate. They're always in compliance where they are. That's what they do. The U.S. tax system is so difficult to comply with. And meaningless. That is where, and also where no one else is doing this, that's where it gets a little, and you're tilting your head where, why are we doing this? And then they add the FATCA crap storm on top of it just to make life extra nasty.
Yeah.
Without any reason.
There's a couple of other things on that. First of all, the banks have spent billions to put FATCA all the way down, almost to the janitor is trained to know about FATCA. And, a teller might have 35 to 50 hours of training. Now, you multiply that by all the tellers in the world on the cost. And then the other thing is, America is stealing money from other countries, because if I have, say, even a tax bill of $700 or $1,000 or $10,000, whatever it is, and have to send it to the U.S. after paying taxes in my resident country, that's money I'm not spending in the country where I'm living. Can you imagine if every single foreign national in the U.S. had to send money for taxes to the other countries that they come from? I mean, the U.S. government would be up in arms.
Yeah, if the situation was reversed, and just say if it was Switzerland who did impose a worldwide taxation on people, and there were Swiss people in the U.S. would look at this and laugh. And it's like, we're never going to do this, and you can go pound sand. But yet, the U.S. tends to be quite a bully. And unfortunately, I was hoping that there'd be some pushback, because I was like, well, yeah, the U.S. is definitely the biggest player, but if you guys all add up yourselves together, you got like an alliance there. You could tell them to go pound sand, and no one ever did. They just sort of fell one by one.
A couple tried. Israel, but it lasted
a
for
little
about a
bit,
week.
but the banks didn't push back.
Yeah,
and there we saw where I think a lot of it came down to was a lot of the tax compliance industry who saw the billions of dollars they could make, sort of strong-armed, made big sales pitches to these banks to say, hey, you better do this. And they probably also said, hey, it's going to be a good thing, because if you're complying with FATCA, you can afford to comply with FATCA. Smaller competitors can't. Therefore, it will give you a better advantage. And that's where, regulations are used to avoid, to help larger businesses avoid competition. I think that was their pitch. I still think you look at it, it was still a loser. It's a loser all the way around, because it's all cost for nothing, and it's all opportunity wasted, opportunity lost. Yet, according to the Sixth Circuit, no, not even
No harm done.
Nah, maybe later, right? Yeah. So, Donna Lane. Now, when FATCA is repealed, are we going to see you in Washington? We're going to have that party.
Tell you what, I'll bring you the champagne.
All right.
We're going to hold you to
It's gonna
that.
all right. Repeal FATCA is going to happen if we all get on this right now. Let's start the push. September is a day away. We need to get the tax reform going. Let's support this. Let's get there. Point
Let's
out
do
the people.
a hashtag repeal FATCA.
Call
Repeal
your
FATCA.
congressman, call your senators.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyone who's listening, call them. Say that you want FATCA repealed.
We put a lot of
If you're
content.
there, citizen-based taxation wouldn't hurt either.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we put a lot of content on our website to show what the opposition was saying, what their strongest we have their strongest arguments, and their strongest arguments are pieces of crap. They do not stand the slightest scrutiny. You could poke so many holes in it, and I think we poked about 15 holes in Elise Bean's testimony. The person who drafted FATCA doesn't understand the law itself, and doesn't understand how it impacts people. And she also glibly stated that, well, yeah, there's U.S. persons there's citizens like Donna Lane who need to renounce citizen, but there's a lot of other people who want to become U.S. citizens. So we should value prospective U.S. citizens more than people who are actually born in the United States and identify as such. A little obnoxious.
Yeah. So what we'll do is we will link to an article with Twitter handles and contact information and things like that. So you can like and comment below, share this video like crazy because it's affecting more people than you know. We want to thank you so much, Donna Lane, for joining us today, and we want to thank everyone for watching.
It is a pleasure, and hope to see you in Washington with that champagne.
That's
All
right.
right.
We'll bring a bottle as well. We might need two.
Okay.